Good morning. How are you all today? Welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I believe that there's a good chance that a race war is coming, and I'm going to explain to you why. And I think that it's going to take a different form than maybe many of us, including myself, have thought. Okay, so get ready for this. Think about this. I think that you need to. And I'm probably going to say some things that are a little bit controversial on this one, and so I want to give a warning ahead of time. I will not allow any racist comments on here, even veiled racist comments. They will come off, and the person who leaves them will get banned, and that includes anything anti-Semitic, pro-Semitic, anything like that. There will be no kind of that stuff allowed. Okay, because we're here to talk about facts. I know some of those are facts, but they also cause problems. And my purpose here is to pass on information and advice, and not get all engaged with the stuff that can take us down a wrong road for now. Okay, all right. Got a call from a good friend of mine a couple of weeks ago, or actually a text, and then I called him back. He's an old partner of mine. He's such a good friend, and that Kelly, my wife, calls him her brother. Okay, he happens to be black, which gives him a different perspective than I have, or many of you. Okay, if you are black, maybe you have his same perspective. But he's one of those guys. He's a very rare individual. He knows everybody. Okay, and he keeps his fingers in all sorts of different groups. Everybody talks to him, and he knows what is going on in pretty much every segment of society, especially the black society. Okay, so when he talks, I listen. Well, we talked a couple of weeks ago, and he had sent me a video of Louis Farrakhan, again stirring up the race stuff. Now, Farrakhan's been at this for a long time. Farrakhan is not the one that you hear much about. The average person outside of that particular circle doesn't hear about him as much as they hear about Al Sharpton and Maxine Waters and what's her name, Crockett, and all these professional race baiters. But Farrakhan still has, and actually I think this clip was from a while back, but it's making its way through the black community again. Okay, and it's of course about you can imagine, right? It's about the injustice of 400 years and stirring up racial hatred. Now, it may surprise you to know that there are many things with which I agree with Farrakhan about. Not his racist views, but many other things. If you don't know much about him, don't jump all over that, and do a little research before you condemn my thoughts on that. You might find that you agree with a lot of what he says too. Well, yesterday, my buddy sent me another text, and I called him back, and he said, "I think it's coming." Well, for the first one, in case I didn't finish my thought, he said that Farrakhan clip is going all through the black community. Now we know there is not a homogeneous black community. Okay, there are just like whites and Mexicans and whatever. There are blacks. And I use the term black. I don't say African American, okay? Because they're not from Africa. I mean, not these people any more than I am from Ireland, okay, or England, or any of the other places that my ancestors came from. So these are blacks. I'm white. That's the term that they use to describe us, okay? Oh, there's other terms, but we're not going to go there. But we know that so-called blacks are not a homogeneous group. Okay, there are blacks who are at the very, very top, and blacks that are at the very, very bottom, much like whites. Okay, so to say that blacks feel a certain way is not good. But when we're talking about this, we're talking about enough people, millions of people potentially, who are being swayed by the hate speech of Louis Farrakhan and others. And so that's what my friend says. He says, this is spreading throughout the black community. And it's not something that you will hear about, you meaning my viewers. You will not hear about this on the news. Even if you watch CNN and MSNBC, you're not going to hear about this to the depth that it's really going on. So that's a wake-up call. So when he called me yesterday, I called him back, or he texted me and I called him back. And he had sent me, he says, did you hear about this this guy who killed the deputy, ran into the deputy because his son had been killed by police the day before? I said, yeah, we were talking about that. And he says, I think you're going to see a lot more of this. If you're not familiar with that case, a guy was killed by police. You can find it on, I'm sure there's plenty of YouTube, probably the Hodge twins and probably Officer Tatum, Brandon Tatum. I suggest you watch both of those channels to see what's going on with this racial hatred building up. So a guy gets killed by police. The next day, his father runs into a deputy who is at a car stop or something alongside the road, runs into him, kills him, obviously in retaliation for his son being killed. Okay, so that's the situation there. And so my buddy says, "Did you hear about that?" And I said, "Yeah, Kelly and I were." He says, "Man, it's coming. There is more coming." And I said, "Well, Kelly and I were talking about that. We think that this might be another, summer of love, another, BLM. Of course, has kind of faded away, but there are other hate groups coming up, and we kind of see the potential of another George Floyd summer." He says, "I don't think it's going to be that." Okay. I said, "Oh, okay. So what do you think?" He says, "I think you're going to see people taking this not to the streets, not riots so much." And I see his point there, because riots, now that Trump's in, they're not going to let people burn cities. The police are going to be set free and take care of this crap. Sadly, so many of the good police have already left. He says, "No, I think it's going to be, people are seeing this as a personal thing, and they're going to take personal vengeance on this. You're going to see more of these individual killings of people that they perceive to be, whether they perceive them to be at fault or whether they just want to make a statement." He says, "I think you're going to see a lot more of these killings." Let me see who's calling here. Excuse me just a second. I got to make, okay. That makes it even more dangerous. And what I mean by that is, when there's a big riot, you know where it is. You can stay away from it. But if we are going to see individual attacks being spurned on by these hate merchants, that means it can happen anywhere, anytime, to anyone. This morning, my brother-in-law, one of my brothers-in-law, texted me a video or a news item, and about a truck driver. I believe this was down in Florida, I'm not sure. A truck driver rammed into a couple of surveyors at the side of the road. The surveyors were standing in front of their vehicle, and this truck, he was a semi driver, just ran right into him, left the scene. They caught him. They took him to court. His name was something like Abdullah, something like that. I can't pronounce it, and I don't care. I don't try. It was a Muslim name. He refused to talk to the judge. Now, the use of the term refused means something, okay? Doesn't mean he wasn't able to talk to the judge. It said an interpreter might be necessary. Well, refused means he stood there not saying anything. That indicates to me, and this isn't definite, and I can't prove this, but as an investigator, I would say, okay, I think there's a potential this was done purposefully. Okay, because if an interpreter was all that was needed, if the man was willing to speak, he would have been speaking his own language. They would have understood what language it is, and they would have got an interpreter in before he went to court. Okay, so his refusal to speak speaks volumes. That makes me think it was another purposeful act. We've seen an increase on these attacks over the last years, but we've seen more of an increase recently, and by that I mean over the last year or over the last several months. I think this is exactly what my friend was saying, that a race war is very possibly coming. Now, another thing, as a matter of fact, I just saw, who's the guy that runs Green Beret Chronicles? Is his name Jake something? I don't know. But he had something up, and I'll probably put this on the Patreon channel. He had something up about Georgia police finding a cache of weapons from the cartel. And Mike Glover made something. Remember when Glover made his about them finding the illegals with 180,000 rounds of 7.62 or 308. We're seeing more and more of this. We are seeing an increase in hatred. Now I'm about to say something very, very, it shouldn't be controversial, but it's going to be. And here's where my warning comes from. We are seeing an increase in anti-white hatred, anti-establishment hatred, and that means anti-white, anti-Western. Okay, they've seen it in Europe, they've seen it in Britain, which may as well not be Britain anymore. We've seen an increase here, not as much as the other places, but it's increasing, and you're not hearing about it in the same way because we have a media, and we have had political leaders who have not been willing to address this head on and honestly. But whether it's the hatred being built up in the black community, the hatred being, or not really hatred, but well, there is kind of a hatred with the cartels. They want to establish a new Aslan through Reconquista. If you're not familiar with that, look it up. It's a retaking of the area that they claim the United States stole from them. And I talk about that in my books. If you haven't read my books, if you have read my books, you know about it. Hatred of the West from Islam. We are at the center of multiple spears at the tips of racial hatred. Guess what? That means if you're white, life is becoming much more dangerous for you. That means if you're black, or if you're a non-jihadist Muslim and you hang around with whites, you are in greater danger. That's just the way it is. I don't know if this will get pulled or not. Maybe. It shouldn't be hate speech saying that one group is being racially targeted by other groups, and that's just the way that it is. And I want to remind you again, I won't allow any racist comments on here. I'm stating a fact, and be very, very careful about what you say. I'd love to leave your comments up, but I won't if they cross over a line that I consider to be too far. Okay. This all comes together with meaning that you need to be more aware in everything you do and in everywhere you go. And one of the first things you need to do is realize that this is real, and realize this is a genuine threat and a clear and present danger. Okay. Now you need to ask yourself whether you are ready to respond to such a threat, an attack, if and when it comes. And you know what I mean by that, right? Are you ready? Do you have the defensive tools? But also, it goes beyond that. It goes to the point of where are you going? Are you prepared wherever you are to stay there for a while? Are you at work? Do you have supplies at your office or wherever you work? Not everybody works in an office. Do you have supplies in your locker at work? Do you have do you have several days worth of food there? Okay, and water. What if something pops off? What if one of these attacks happens against an individual and it sets off riots around the area? And do you want to try to drive through a riot to get home? You have to make that decision, that determination. This is why you need to know various routes from wherever you are to get home. This is why you need good communications between the members of your family. This is why husbands need to know where their wives are. Wives need to know where their husbands are, where they're going, when they expect to be at another place. It's just smart. It's just good communications, which you ought to be following anyway. But then, as I've talked about before, at the very base has to be your realization and your acceptance that these things can happen. So that if it does happen, if you're out someplace and a truck is coming down a street faster than it should be, or seeming to come towards your lane, you don't just stand there and go, what the hell is that guy doing? Doesn't he know? Because about the time you're asking yourself, what the hell is he doing? Well, you're dead. He's run over. You need to assess, the old Udaloop, right? Observe, orient, decide, act. And I've always said, long before the Udaloop came out, I taught people, whenever you're faced with a threat or an attack, you have three essentially enemies. You have confusion, fear, and then the attacker or the event itself. And that simply means that the very first part, the confusion, is what people fight themselves through first. And that means not understanding, not accepting the reality of the situation. You need to accept that the world has become more dangerous, is becoming more dangerous all the time. And while everybody is all wrapped up in what the heck's going on between India and Pakistan and Ukraine and Russia and China and Taiwan and all this kind of stuff, the danger is close at home. The danger is here. And it's becoming more dangerous every day. Okay? So that's why, I want to warn you, and I want to suggest that you think about this, talk about this to members of your family, let them know that it's serious. If you have teenagers, they won't, life is pretty good for them. They may not take you seriously. Do everything you can. Excuse me. If you live in a smaller town, now everybody thinks that these things happen just in big cities. They don't. As a matter of fact, I've said before how small towns can be, more attractive targets for these kind of people because they don't have the same. First off, people who live in smaller towns or rural areas, and this may not apply to you. There's a lot of you that are super sharp and you are on guard all the time. But for the most part, people who live rurally or in small towns, they don't live with the same on the edge awareness and acceptance that life can be threatening as people who live in a city or in the suburbs. And so that can make smaller towns or rural areas more enticing targets for these kind of hate things. And they don't have the same emergency services, police, fire, emergency medical, and things like that. So wherever you live, be careful. Understand that this is something that has been building for a long time. It may not pop off like we've seen before with the riots, but it could. But according to my friend and according to my little antennas, I think it's becoming more dangerous, and that there may be an increase in individual attacks, and those are not things for which society as a whole can prepare. It's something that only you personally can prepare for and always be ready for. Always ready, right? Semper paratus. Okay, to conclude this, just remind you that this and all of my videos are brought to you by the Stonemont series, my books. Somebody asked me, when am I going to get my books? And I'm going to keep telling you, we're waiting for a new order in right now. The Stonemont series, the reversion, the revival, the renewal, and appeal to heaven, the blessings of freedom, hostages to fortune, and on wings like eagles. The complete plan for preparing for, surviving, and rebuilding after a total collapse of everything. People tell me it's the best post-apocalyptic series they've ever read. I thank them for that. And you can get them a couple of different ways. If you haven't read them yet and you're serious about preparedness, or if you just love a good story, this might be the next thing you want to do. You can get them through Amazon. That link is down below. Or you can get them a better way, and that's through me, but you have to wait if you get them through me. I'll explain that in a minute. If you get them through me, you can get you get them signed, number one. You get a note. I write a note in there to you and everything, and I love doing that. And you can get them as a set. Excuse me, they're getting too much for me to hold. You can get them as a set, which you can't get on Amazon, but when you buy them as a set, which is how probably over 90% of the people buy them, you get a nice discount, because we save money, and when we, packaging, handling, and shipping, and everything like that, and we pass that on to you. And then I also stick in the Stonemont notebook, and you can get that through our website, stonemont.us. A word of warning there is I don't get them to you as quickly as Amazon does. Amazon get to you in a couple of days probably, but we are always snowed under with orders. I thank the Lord for that. We are always snowed under for orders, and I get them shipped out, and we run out, and I order another shipment, and we run out, and I order another shipment, and it's a great problem to have. But I hate the fact that people have to wait that long. We're trying to upgrade our ordering system so we have a better understanding of how many we need, and every time I do, sales just explode more, and I think that I've caught up, and I haven't. That's all a big explanation of it's going to take a few weeks to get them to you. Okay, I hope, I love it when you buy them through me, but I want you to know that. Okay, just realize you'll get them, but you'll get them in a few weeks, not in a couple of days. Okay, all right, all right. Remember what I was saying. I have it on. I take this as good authority, not what I read in the news or whatever. One of these lame brains going off. My buddy, who has his fingers on the pulse of pretty much every group out there, says he's expecting more and more individual attacks to occur, and it is widespread. There are millions of people feeling this way in our country now. And it's no time has it been a better example of the fact that you need to be your own first responder. Okay, so be ready. All right, and like we say, prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow. Get ready, stay ready. It's always better to be ready than have to get ready. So be ready all the time. Okay, Semper paratus. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.